Hello friends, welcome back. In this video we are going to continue with the same topic, that is triggers, and we are going to implement the triggers to maintain the audit record after every insert, delete or update events in the database. So let's start with a brief description of the basic topics. We already had a detailed discussion in the previous video. The link is given in the description box. So let's start. So triggered, as we have already discussed, are the stored procedures that Oracle database invokes automatically on a triggering event, and they are always applied to the new data to prevent from the invalid transactions. Means once you created the trigger, all the further transactions can be affected by the trigger but not the previous transaction. Those transactions which are already completed cannot be influenced or cannot be prevented any action. So here you have two options, means trigger you can use or invoke the trigger before or after the transaction. So they are going to specify when the trigger fires, either before or after the triggering event, that is insert, update or delete. In the previous video we had the detailed discussion for the before clause, means we used before clause to create a trigger to be invoked before every insert and update, and to check for the conditions like salary must be must not be less than 0 before insertion or updation, and if this condition is satisfied, only then that record should be inserted or updated in the database. But here we are going to use the after clause for the triggering events. So why we use triggers? To maintain the log events, means whatever we are making changes or whatever modifications we are doing should be recorded, and also to gather the statistics on the table access, means who has accessed the data, when the data was accessed, and what was the transaction, means what transaction has accessed the data. Secondly, we can also keep track against every table data modification, means once you are modifying the data, like data 1 is modified to data 2. So before modifying or after update, you can create a log like data 1 is recorded or stored in a backup audit file, and then data 2 is updated in the table, and further after the updation, further updation means data 2 is further updated to data 3, then we are maintaining a record for the data 2, okay, and so on. If it is further updated, then we are maintaining the record for data 3. So this is how the triggers can work, and they can create a backup table and audit record for the further analysis. So syntax we have already discussed. Create or replace, we have two options, means we can replace the existing trigger or can create a new trigger. So before and after, two options are here, means whether you want to invoke the trigger before a transaction or after a transaction. We have already practiced before clause in the previous video, so this time we are going to focus on the after clause. So after, if we want a trigger to be invoked after a triggering event, and this event can be insert, update or delete on a specific table, okay. Next we have the option for each row. If you are not using this option for each row, then it would be then the trigger will be running for one time only, means the trigger would be executed for one time only. So if you want to invoke the trigger for every transaction, means every transaction making changes to the rows in the database, then you must write for each row. And next option, enable and disable is to make the trigger active or inactive. So by default it is enabled, by default this option is enabled. So whether you mention or not, it is enabled. So declaration section, we have to declare the variables, and then we have the executable section. Here we have skipped one section here with when and condition for the trigger to be executed, and the exception section, exception handling section to handle the exception. So we are not covering all these two options in this video. So To delete a trigger, we have the drop trigger option, drop trigger and then followed by the trigger name. Please note down that we can have multiple triggers like T1 and T2 for one table. Suppose we have a database, so you can have multiple triggers for one database, and if you want to delete a trigger, you can perform it easily, means drop trigger and then trigger name, then the trigger will be deleted. But if you drop the table, means if I write the query like drop table db, okay, so if you are deleting the base table of all the triggers, then T2 means the second trigger would also be deleted. If the table is deleted, all the related triggers would be deleted automatically. So this is the rule. Next, in this example, we are going to use employee as a sample table that we have already, means this is the same table that we have used for the previous practical as well. So here we are, instead of before, I am going to use after, means we are preparing the audit record after every insertion, deletion or updation. So here we have already done this for insertion. So let's see what new we have for deletion and updation. So if you are making means if you want to keep the older record into the database, means we want the older record to be kept securely for the audits, okay, or the analysis of reports, then you can create one more table, okay, that the trigger will use that table to keep all the updated, inserted or deleted records from the base table, okay. And you can also, means along with the records, you can also keep extra information for the audit, like the date of the transaction, when the transaction was executed, and the user info, who has executed the transaction, and last you can also keep the transaction name, means which transaction is responsible for that updation, means for that audit record, like whether it can be insert or a delete or a update, okay. So here you are going to store these extra information in the audit table, okay. So here we will create this audit table where we have the same field as the employee table. These are the same field as the employee table, plus some extra information for our record like date of transaction, user who has performed the transaction or executed the transaction, and the transaction name. Transaction name will include update, insert and delete. Here we are going to take example of update and delete only, because we have already done insertion in the previous practical. So but in implementation we will be also performing insertion operation. So here suppose we want to update this record to 20,000, okay. So the record will be updated to 20,000, but we lost this previous record, we lost the previous data that the salary was 10,000 earlier, okay. So to maintain this type of information, to maintain such audit record, we will be using trigger, and trigger will after update, so after update trigger will save the date, the user who has updated the record, and the transaction was update for this record, and we are storing the older record, okay. You can also keep the new record in the audit table, but I think logically that will be of no use, okay. You must store the older information because new information is already present in the table, okay. Suppose next time I want to update this record to 30,000, okay, then audit table must have a new entry with the new updated record, okay. So here we have new entry for the 20,000, and now the updated value is 30,000, and this time we are having a second date, means when the record was updated at the second time, and the user information and the transaction information, the transaction was update for this record, okay. Now next time if I want to delete this record, so table will be having only 2 rows, after deletion, but I also want to keep the information of all the rows deleted earlier. Okay, so for that the update means your audit table is going to have the complete detail, like this record was deleted on date this from this system and the transaction was deleted. Okay, so you need to create one table employee audit to store such type of information, and the trigger will update this table means audit table automatically after every insert, update or delete. So let's start this in practical. So here we are going to create the employee table like we have done for the previous session also. So here is the command. So create table EMP, and we are going to have employee number, employee name, salary and the department. Okay, so let's quickly create the table. I have already written these commands just to save the time. So the table is already in use. I need to drop it. Okay, so the table is dropped. So let's create the table again. So the table is created. Okay, but I am not going to insert anything to the table because I need to firstly create the audit table, because every transaction or every changes, whether it is insert or update or delete, must be recorded. So let's create another audit table. So this table is going to be named as create table employee audit, and we are having 3 extra fields. So these fields are same as the employee table, but we are going to have 3 extra fields like transaction date, and for this the data type is date. And next we want to store the user information. For that we have the transaction user, means who is the user of transaction, and the third we have the transaction name, means what is the name of transaction, whether it is insert, delete or update. So we are going to store everything. Next we have employee number, employee name. These are the same records that we are going to pick from the base table, that is your employee table. So let's create the audit table. Then we will write the trigger. So audit table is created. Now we want whether whenever we insert a record to the employee table, it should be store, means it should be also audited or recorded in the audit table, means every entry should be in the audit table, and then it should be updated or inserted to the base table. So let's write the trigger. So for this we will be writing create or replace trigger. This time I am naming the trigger as employee underscore trigger, and I want to perform the event insert, means after insert, once the insert operation is successful on employee for each row, then I want to declare the transaction name variable that can store the name of the transaction. And then we have the begin section where we are going to assign a name to the transaction name variable, and transaction name is insert in this case because we are performing the insertion operation. And next we have the insert command. Okay, so this time we are going to insert into the employee audit table. So this is our second table that we have created after the employee table. So every insertion operation must be recorded with the date, present date. So for present date you must write system date. Okay, so system date is going to automatically insert the present date. And next we have the user information. For that you just need to write the user, and it will insert the system username, means whatever is the present system username, it will insert that name to the table. And next we have the transaction name that we have initialized to insert. okay, because we are working on insert operation first. Then we have employee number, employee name, salary and the department. We have already discussed this. We have two types of, we can say that, permission to access the tables record. So whether you are accessing it with the new or old. So suppose you have old dot salary. We already discussed about this example. So next we have new dot salary. So old salary is same as a old salary, it will be the record before updation, and new salary is the record after updation. So suppose older salary was 10,000 and new salary is 20,000. Okay, so you can use these two keywords like old dot salary to denote the record or entry before updation, and new dot salary to denote the new entry to the salary field. Okay, so this is the case when you are working on the update event. But for new event, this is for update. Okay, but for new you are only supposed to refer the new field only, because there is no earlier or the previous value. You are always going to have a new value with the insert operation. Okay, so for insert you always need to refer the new entry of the attribute. Okay, for example, new dot salary, new dot name, new dot e number. For insert operation you will be accessing the new records only, because there is no older version of that particular entry. Okay, but if you are dealing with delete, so if you are dealing with delete, you are only having the old entries, old dot name, e name, old dot salary. Okay, because after deletion there is no new record. So for update you can have access to old and new record, but for insert and delete you have only one entry. Means for insert you have only new record, and for delete you have access to only old record. If you try to access a old record with insert clause, then you are going to get a blank value or null. Similarly with the delete option, if you are trying to access a new dot e name, then you are going to get a null value. Okay, you can try this. So with update you will have access to old and newer value, but with insert only new value can be accessed, and with delete only old value can be accessed. Better take care of this thing. Now we have created this trigger. So let me clear this space. Okay, so with this we have created the trigger employee. We are going to create the trigger employee underscore trigger, and we are adding the event after insert. Means we are focusing on after insert. After insertion we need to create a backup entry for the audit record, and this time transaction name that we are going to store is as insert, and we are going to insert the date, user, name of the transaction, and the new entry of the name, e-name, number, salary and the department into the audit table. So let's execute this trigger. So the trigger is created successfully. Now let's try to insert the records to the employee table. So every record must be inserted to employee, should also be reflected to audit table. So insert So one row is created and inserted successfully into the table. So let's create one more entry, then we will check. So this time department I am going to take is IT, name as B. Second row is also inserted. Let's insert one more row with department as mechanical. Okay, so 3 rows are inserted. So let's make the selection. Select star from employee, and this is the resultant rows. And if you try to extract the records of audit table, okay, and here is the listing. So here for every insertion, like we have inserted this row on this date, the user was system, username was system, and the transaction was insert. Okay, so we have all the 3 entries, means 3 records in the audit table as well, but with the transaction information, system information, and the date information. Likewise, you can keep the updation. You can update the or modify the trigger to keep track of every update or delete operations as well. So let's modify the trigger this time for the delete operation. So this time we want to implement it for delete as well. So delete, insert or delete, we have both the options now. So this time we need to use if condition, because transaction can be of insert type or delete type. Okay, so both options are available. So let's change. So let's assign a if condition. Use the if condition if we are deleting. So we have some fixed clause like deleting. We can directly check for delete operation, delete transaction, inserting, updating. These are the fixed keywords. We can say that you can directly use if deleting, then transaction name, or we can say that here if inserting, then transaction name is insert, else we have the transaction name as delete. Okay, and last we have end if. So this, your code must be syntactically correct. So this is the if condition that we are using to prepare the records accordingly. So if insert, and please take care if you are writing old in the case of insert. So if you are writing old.enumber, all.ename, you are going to get a null entry in the audit table. Okay, because there is no old record for a new insert operation. Similarly for delete you need to use old, not new. So if inserting, then transaction name is insert, else the transaction name is delete, and next we have the end if operation. So you need to be syntactically correct. Now if you are inserting into the table, okay, insert into employee audit values this. So for deletion, let's see what will happen if we are trying to delete something. So this time we are just updating the trigger. Trigger is updated, created, but we have not edited this entry. Means for delete I am using new.enumber, new.ename, new.salary and new.department, but I must use old. Okay, so let's see what will happen if I am trying to delete something from the table. So let's write a delete command, delete from emp where Okay, so one row is deleted means last entry from the table is deleted, last row is deleted. So let's list the table. So the row is deleted from the table. Let's also check the entry for the audit table. Okay, so the on 10th April transaction executed as delete, transaction name is delete, but we got no entry because I hope you can guess the reason, because I have used the new keyword over here that I was supposed to use old one. Okay, because new for delete operation we are not having any new entry. For delete we have the old entry, and for insert we have the new entry. So I need to use if condition over here again. If deleting, then the query must be like, okay, let's change it to inserting. If inserting, then the query should be like this. Okay, else. So if deleting, if we are deleting, then the query should be like this. Sorry, inserting. So if you are inserting, then you can use the new values of the attributes. Okay, but if you are not deleting, means you are performing some deletion, you are not performing insertion, then for else case I need to change the query. For the older records, so here I am going to write old okay. So the trigger is complete. This time we have the option for insert as well as for the delete. So if I am inserting, then the transaction name is insert, else the transaction name is delete, and if. So don't forget to add and if over here also, otherwise you are going to get compilation error. So if inserting, if you are performing insertion operation, then you are using the new values, else you are using the old values, because we have only two options. This trigger will be invoked only two times, one for insertion and one for deletion. So if it's not insertion, then it surely be a deletion. So let's replace the trigger again. So trigger is created. Let's try to delete another row from the table. Delete from So the row is deleted. So let's list the table. This is the only entry left in the table, and let's check the audit table this time. Okay, so as we have modified the trigger, so this time we are getting the entry for the deleted record as well, because for deletion we are going to run this insertion operation. So we had just made the choice, means if it's insertion, then this query would be run, otherwise this query would be run for the deletion operation. So this time we have used old, so we are getting the values in the audit table as well. But when we were using the new in the insertion query, then we were not getting any value for the deletion transaction. So transaction is delete, and this is the deleted row. So we have the deleted row or deleted record within our audit table. So let's insert one or two records, then we will move to the update query. Okay, I have inserted 2 records. So this is our table again. So let's modify the trigger for we can say that update operation as well. So or update, this time we are also going to add the update operation to our trigger. So then I need to add one more else condition. If inserting, then transaction name is insert. If else, transaction name is delete. So this time, as I am adding one more event, that is update event. So I need to use else if, because we have 3 conditions, 3 events. So for that you need to write else, else if, deleting. Then if you are deleting, transaction name is delete. Okay, else transaction name is update. So the third transaction is added as update, but you need to assign the transaction name carefully, and you need to be syntactically correct while writing the code for else if ladder. So here I need to update the insertion query as well, but if you can see carefully, for inserting we need new values, but for updation and deletion we can keep the older values in the older values for the audit table. So I think our code is complete. Means if it's the case of insertion, only the transaction name would be changed, means insert, but for all other 2 cases, means for deletion and updation, we can have this query, this insert query to run, because this query is working with the older values. So I think our trigger should work fine. So let's try. So this time we are having all the option insert, delete or update in our trigger, and trigger is created successfully without any error. So let's try to update values to the table. So this is our table. So let's try to update the salary from 10,000 to 20,000. Update employee, set where. Okay, so the row is updated successfully. Let's list the table again. So table is having the updated value, but audit must kept the previous value. Okay, so let's check. Yes, we have another entry in the audit table. This time the transaction is update. Okay, we also had 2 insertion operations. So entry is here, and we have the update operation this time on this date, and the older values for the record was this, and the newer values, new updated value is 20,000. So this is the record with the previous value, older value before updation. Okay, so let's try to update something else. Again I am updating the salary to 30,000, and let's check the audit table. This time we are having the entry for 20,000, because earlier the salary was updated from 10,000 to 20,000. So now the salary is updated from 20,000 to 30,000. So we are having the corresponding entry for the 20,000 in the audit table. Okay, so let's modify the trigger again, and to be more precise, like I want to perform the update of salary only, means I just need to keep track of salary update or department update only. So you can also write the trigger or modify the trigger to keep track of only the salaries updation and the departments updation, and the trigger won't run for other updations. Like if you try to update the employee number, employee name, so the trigger won't be invoked for all other updations. So let's try. So this time the trigger is same, but this time we have changed the update operation, update event for the salary and department only. We have specified that salary and department updation, only the salary and department updation should be recorded in the audit table, should be inserted in the audit table. Okay, so let's try to update something. So I am going to update the employee name this time. Where employee number is 111. So the employee name is updated successfully. Okay, so A is changed to X, but the record is not captured by the audit table, means not captured by the trigger, because we are not updating salary or department. So as we have modified the trigger to capture only the update of salary and department, so it is not so the trigger is not invoked if we trying to change any other record like E number or E name. So the audit record is intact, means it has not recorded the last updation. Okay, so that's it for this video. In next video we will have more conditions with the triggers in the database. So till then, bye and take care.